The red dust of the dead planet swirled around Dr. Kane Voss as he stepped out of the transport ship. His blue skin felt the harsh wind through his protective suit, and his four eyes scanned the wasteland that stretched to the horizon. This was Terra Prime, the third planet from a yellow star that the ancient records called Sol. Once this world had been green and blue, covered with water and life. Now it was nothing but rocks and sand. Another waste of time, Lieutenant Zara Thex muttered through the comm system. Her voice carried the typical arrogance of the Vorthak military. She stood beside him, her tall frame covered in black armor, her red eyes glowing behind her helmet. "Why do we keep searching these dead rocks?" Dr. Voss adjusted his scanning equipment and smiled. "Because the Coalition pays us well to study the past, and sometimes the past holds surprises." The two beings had been partners for 3 years, digging through the ruins of dead civilizations across the galaxy. Voss was a scientist who loved solving mysteries. Thex was a soldier who wanted to find something valuable enough to advance her career. They made an odd team, but they got results. The Galactic Coalition had ruled the galaxy for over 600 years. The Zeltharian Empire and their Vorthak allies controlled thousands of worlds, keeping peace through superior technology and military might. Most species had joined willingly, eager to share in the prosperity and protection the Coalition offered. A few had resisted and been crushed. The humans had been the last to resist. The records showed they had been a primitive species that refused to accept Coalition rule. They had fought a hopeless war against forces far beyond their understanding. In the end, the Coalition had been forced to destroy them completely during what history called the Great Purge. That had been 460 years ago. Now Terra Prime served as a reminder of what happened to species that defied the Coalition. Tour groups sometimes visited to see the ruins of human cities, to learn about the folly of resisting progress. But most of the planet remained unexplored, considered unworthy of serious study. Voss had different ideas. He had spent years studying human artifacts, and something about their technology puzzled him. For a primitive species, they had shown remarkable creativity in their final years. Their weapons had been crude but effective. Their defensive systems had been simple but hard to break. They had lasted longer against Coalition forces than anyone expected. "The deep scans show something unusual beneath the surface," Voss said, checking his instruments. "There's a structure about 2 kilometers down made from materials that don't match anything else on this planet." Thex sighed but activated her digging equipment. "Fine, but if this is another empty bunker, I'm requesting a transfer to a real military unit." The excavation took 3 days. Voss used careful techniques to preserve anything they might find, while Thex used brute force methods that got faster results. As they dug deeper, the readings became more interesting. The structure was not just buried, it was sealed and powered. "That's impossible," Thex said, staring at her scanner. "Nothing has had power on this planet for centuries." Voss felt his excitement growing. "Unless it has its own power source. Something designed to last." They broke through the final layer of rock and metal to find a chamber that defied explanation. The walls were smooth and clean, glowing with soft white light. The air inside was fresh and breathable. Banks of strange equipment lined the walls, all of it humming with quiet power. "By the void," Thex whispered. "This place is still active." At the center of the chamber stood a single device that made both of them stop and stare. It was a cylinder about the size of a person, made from clear material that showed the contents inside. Floating in a blue liquid was a figure that made Voss's heart skip a beat. It was a human. Not a skeleton or mummified remains, but a living human in perfect condition. The being was male, with pale skin and dark hair. He looked young and strong, his body showing the kind of muscle development that came from intensive training. A metal plate on the cylinder gave information in human writing. Voss activated his translation program and read the words aloud. "Captain Ryan Blake, United Earth, Defense Force Serial Number 7749 Alpha. A human," Thex said, her voice filled with wonder and disgust. "A living human." Voss walked around the cylinder, his scientific mind racing. The preservation technology was beyond anything in Coalition records. The human's body showed no signs of decay or aging. His vital signs, according to the monitors, were stable but slow, as if he was in some kind of deep sleep. "This changes everything," Voss said. "If we can wake him up, we could learn things about human culture that no one else knows. The scientific value alone would make us famous." Thex was thinking differently. A living human could be worth more than fame. The military would pay anything for a chance to study their old enemy. We could learn their weaknesses, their secrets, their way of thinking. Both of them stared at the sleeping figure, each seeing different possibilities. Neither of them noticed the small devices hidden throughout the chamber, devices that had been recording their every word and movement since they entered. Neither of them saw the tiny lights that flickered to life on panels throughout the facility, systems that had been waiting for this moment for over 4 centuries. The human in the cylinder remained perfectly still, but his brain patterns showed changes that the ancient monitors recognized. After 460 years of waiting, Captain Ryan Blake was beginning to dream. And in those dreams, he remembered everything. He remembered the day the aliens came. He remembered the war that followed. He remembered volunteering for Project Lazarus, humanity's desperate gamble for survival. Most importantly, he remembered the promises he had made to the people who would never wake up. The 2 aliens who had found him thought they had discovered a relic from the past. They had no idea they had just triggered the return of humanity's future. The chamber's hidden systems began sending signals across the galaxy, signals that would wake other sleepers in other hidden places. The Great Purge had not been as complete as the Coalition believed. Dr. Caney Voss and Lieutenant Zara Thex made their decision. They would take the human back to their ship and attempt to revive him. It seemed like a simple choice, driven by curiosity and greed. They could not know that this decision would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The age of human silence was about to end. Dr. Caney Voss stared at the scanning results for the 3rd time, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. The data made no sense. According to every measurement his instruments could take, the human specimen was becoming stronger each day. Not just healing from his long sleep, but actually improving beyond his original baseline. "This is impossible," Voss muttered, calling up more detailed scans. "His cellular structure is changing. Look at these readings." Lieutenant Zara Thex leaned over, his shoulder to examine the data. "What am I looking at?" "His DNA is rewriting itself. These modifications are happening in real time. His muscle density has increased by 12% since we revived him. His bone structure is becoming denser. His neural pathways are forming new connections." Thex frowned. "You said humans were primitive. How can primitive beings modify their own biology?" "They cannot," Voss said firmly. "At least they should not be able to. But these readings do not lie." Captain Ryan Blake sat in his assigned quarters, pretending to read a basic text about galactic history while actually accessing the ship's computer through his neural implants. The aliens had given him simple educational materials, treating him like a child who needed to learn about the modern galaxy. They had no idea he was downloading their entire database. What he found confirmed his worst fears and his greatest hopes. The Coalition had indeed tried to wipe out humanity completely. They had bombed every major city, destroyed every military base, and systematically hunted down survivors. But they had missed things, important things. The records showed 17 cryogenic facilities that had never been found. Dozens of hidden bases that had been marked destroyed but showed no evidence of actual damage. Most importantly, the Coalition had never located the deep space installations that had been humanity's final backup plan. Blake allowed himself a small smile. Project Exodus had worked exactly as designed. While the Coalition celebrated their victory over primitive humans, thousands of enhanced soldiers had been sleeping in hidden facilities across the galaxy, waiting for the right signal to wake them up. The door to his quarters opened without warning. Lieutenant Thex entered carrying a portable scanner and wearing a suspicious expression. She had been watching him more carefully over the past few days, and Blake could see the doubt growing. in her red eyes. "Stand up," she ordered. "I need to run some tests." Blake obeyed without question, maintaining his facade of cooperative confusion. "Is something wrong?" "Maybe," Thex said, activating her scanner. "Dr. Voss thinks you are getting stronger. I think you are getting smarter." She was right, of course. The enhancement process that had been done to his body before cryosleep was designed to activate gradually after revival. His strength, speed, and intelligence were all increasing as his modified cells reached their full potential. But he could not let them know that. "I feel the same," Blake lied. "Maybe your machines are broken." Thex studied the scanner readings with growing alarm. "Your brain activity is off the charts. Yesterday you could barely speak our language. Today you are using complex sentences and technical terms." Blake shrugged. "I learn fast." "Too fast," Thex said. "No species learns that fast, not even the Zeltharians." She was getting dangerous. Blake could see the military training in her posture, the way her hand stayed near her weapon. She was starting to see him as a threat instead of a specimen. That could be useful, but it was also risky. "Dr. Voss wants to see you," Thex said. "He has questions about human technology." They walked through the ship's corridors to the main laboratory. Blake had memorized every passage, every room, every security system during his time aboard. The Dominion's Pride was a typical Coalition research vessel, designed for scientific work rather than combat. Its defenses were minimal, its crew small, and its computer systems laughably primitive by human standards. Dr. Voss was waiting in, the lab surrounded by holographic displays showing complex data. He looked up as they entered, his expression mixing excitement with concern. "Captain Blake," Voss said, "I need you to explain something to me. These scans show that your body contains artificial modifications, microscopic machines, technology that should not exist in a primitive species." Blake had been expecting this question. "We called them nanobots, medical machines to help soldiers heal faster." "Nanobots," Voss repeated. "Yes, we have similar technology, but yours are different, more advanced. They are not just healing you, they are upgrading you." "I do not understand," Blake said, though he understood perfectly. "Upgrading how?" Voss activated a holographic display showing Blake's cellular structure. "Your nanobots are rewriting your genetic code. They are making you stronger, faster, smarter. This is not medical technology. This is military enhancement far beyond anything in our records." Lieutenant Thex stepped closer, her hand now openly resting on her weapon. "Who are you really? What are you really?" Blake looked at both of them. Seeing the fear beginning to replace their scientific curiosity, they were starting to understand that they had not captured a helpless relic. They had awakened something they could not control. "I told you," Blake said calmly. "I am Captain Ryan Blake, United Earth Defense Force." "The Earth Defense Force was a joke," Thex said harshly. "Primitive humans with crude weapons, they were crushed in months." "Were we?" Blake asked, and for the first time, he let some of his real personality show through. "Are you sure about that?" Dr. Voss caught the change in Blake's tone immediately. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe your history books are wrong," Blake said. "Maybe we were not as primitive as you think. Maybe we were not as defeated as you believe." He stood up slowly, and both aliens instinctively stepped back. The change in Blake's presence was unmistakable. The confused, helpless specimen was gone. In his place stood a predator who had been pretending to be prey. "The Coalition won," Thex said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Humanity is extinct." "Then what am I?" Blake asked. "If humanity is extinct, if we were so primitive, if we were so completely defeated, then how am I standing here? How am I getting stronger every day? How am I learning your technology faster than you can understand it?" Voss and Thex looked at each other, both of them beginning to realize the magnitude of their mistake. They had thought they were studying the past. Instead, they had awakened the future. "There are others," Blake said quietly. "Others like me. Others who have been sleeping and waiting. Others who remember what you did to our people." Impossible, Voss whispered. Is it? Blake smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. Your own scans show that my body contains technology you do not understand. Your own records admit that some human facilities were never found. Your own databases show gaps in your knowledge of human capabilities. He walked to the laboratory's main computer terminal and placed his hand on the interface. Both aliens watched, in shock as the screen came alive with data streams that moved too fast for them to follow. What are you doing? Thex demanded, reaching for her weapon. Calling home, Blake said simply. The ship's communication array activated without authorization. Long-range transmitters began broadcasting signals toward distant stars, signals encoded with frequencies that had not been heard in the galaxy for over 4 centuries. Signals that would wake sleeping soldiers in hidden facilities across the galaxy. Stop him! Voss shouted. But it was too late. The signals were already sent, already racing toward their destinations at faster-than-light speed. In hidden places throughout Coalition space, ancient computers were receiving the activation codes and beginning revival sequences. Blake turned to face his captors, no longer bothering to hide his true nature. Thank you for waking me up. I could not have done this without you. Lieutenant Thex drew her weapon, but Blake was already moving. 460 years of suppressed anger and centuries of military training unleashed in a single moment. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had been so hard to kill. The age of human silence was over. The age of human vengeance was about to begin. The revival chamber aboard the Dominion's Pride hummed with activity as Dr. Caney Voss made final preparations. The ship's medical bay had been converted into a laboratory, filled with monitoring equipment and scanning devices. Lieutenant Zara Thex stood guard at the door, her weapon ready, though she doubted a primitive human could pose any real threat. Are you certain about this? Thex asked for the 3rd time. Coalition regulations require approval for reviving any extinct species. Voss waved a dismissive hand. Regulations are for bureaucrats. We have a chance to make history. Besides, what harm could one sleeping human do? The cryogenic cylinder had been carefully transported from Terra Prime and connected to the ship's power systems. The human inside remained perfectly still, his body suspended in the blue preservation fluid. Voss had spent 2 days studying the revival process, amazed by the elegant simplicity of human technology. Beginning revival sequence, Voss announced, his fingers dancing over the controls. Heart rate is increasing. Brain activity is rising. Fascinating. Their medical technology was far more advanced than our records suggest. The fluid began to drain from the cylinder. The human's chest rose and fell with deeper breaths. His eyelids fluttered and his hands clenched into fists. After 460 years of dreamless sleep, Captain Ryan Blake was returning to consciousness. Blake's eyes snapped open, and he gasped for air. The world around him was blurry and strange. Unfamiliar voices spoke in a language he did not recognize. His body felt weak and stiff, but his mind was sharp. Training kicked in automatically. He remained still and listened, learning what he could before revealing he was awake. Remarkable, Voss said in his own language. Look at his muscle definition, his bone density. This specimen was clearly enhanced beyond normal human parameters. Thex leaned closer, studying Blake's face. He looks young for someone who was frozen for centuries. How old was he when they put him in that machine? According to the records, 28 standard years. Prime age for a warrior, I suppose. Blake understood none of their words, but he recognized the tone. They were discussing him like a laboratory animal. He had heard similar conversations during his time in military research programs. These beings saw him as an object to be studied, not a person to be respected. Slowly, Blake opened his eyes and looked around. The room was clearly alien, with technology that was both advanced and unfamiliar. 2 beings stood nearby, watching, him with scientific curiosity. One was tall and blue-skinned with 4 eyes. The other was even taller, with red eyes that glowed in the dim light. He's awake, Thex said, switching to basic galactic standard, a simple language used for communication between species. Can you understand us human? Blake nodded slowly, though he only caught parts of what she said. He had studied some alien languages during his military service, but this was different from anything in Earth's databases. Still, he could pick out keywords and meanings. "Where am I?" Blake asked, his voice rough from centuries of silence. "You are aboard our research vessel," Voss replied, speaking slowly and clearly. "You have been sleeping for a very long time. We found you on your homeworld and brought you here to study." Blake sat up carefully, testing his strength. His body responded well, better than he had expected. The enhancement procedures he had undergone before entering cryosleep seemed to have worked perfectly. His muscles were strong, his reflexes sharp, and his mind clear. "How long?" Blake asked. 460 of your years, Thek said, watching his reaction carefully. "Your species has been extinct for centuries. You are the last human in the galaxy." Blake showed no emotion at this news, though inside he felt a cold fury building. He had expected to wake up to a changed world, but not to total defeat. Everything he had fought for, everyone he had known, was gone. The aliens had won completely. "My name is Dr. Caney Voss," the blue being said. "This is Lieutenant Zara Thex. We are scientists and soldiers of the Galactic Coalition. We mean you no harm. We only wish to learn about your people." Blake nodded and stood up, moving slowly to avoid appearing threatening. He was naked and weaponless, surrounded by advanced technology and beings who could easily overpower him. But he was not helpless. His training had prepared him for situations like this. "I am Captain Ryan Blake," he said, deciding that truth was better than lies for now. "United Earth Defense Force." "Excellent," Voss said, his excitement obvious. "You can tell us about human military structure, technology, culture. There is so much we want to know." Blake spent the next several hours answering their questions, being careful to reveal only information that could not harm anyone. He told them about Earth's geography, about human biology, about basic military ranks and procedures. He did not tell them about Project Lazarus, about the enhancement programs, or about the other secrets that humanity had developed in its final years. The aliens treated him exactly as he expected. They spoke about him in front of him as if he could not understand. They discussed his primitive nature and limited intelligence. They marveled at his physical condition while dismissing his mental capabilities. "Look at his muscle fibers," Voss said during one examination. "Incredible density, and these scars suggest extensive surgical modification. They were experimenting on their own soldiers." "Typical of a dying species," Thex replied. "Desperate measures when facing superior forces." Blake endured their prodding and testing without complaint. He answered their questions with the patience of someone who had nothing left to lose. But behind his calm exterior, he was learning everything he could about his captors. He studied their technology, noting weaknesses in their security systems. He observed their behavior, cataloging their arrogance and overconfidence. He listened to their conversations, slowly building his understanding of their language and their society. Most importantly, he tested the ship's computer systems during his daily examinations. His neural implants installed during the enhancement process were far more advanced than anything these aliens suspected. While they thought they were studying a primitive specimen, he was hacking into their databases and learning about the galaxy they controlled. What he found there filled him with both hope and rage. The Coalition had not destroyed humanity as completely as they claimed. There were gaps in their records, missing facilities that should have been found and destroyed. Project Exodus had worked better than anyone had dared hope, Blake maintained, his facade of weakness and confusion while secretly planning his next moves. The aliens thought they had captured a relic from the past. They had no idea they had awakened humanity's future, and that future was about to become very dangerous for anyone who stood in its way. Night after night, as his captors slept, Blake worked to access more of the ship's systems. He was patient, methodical, and completely invisible to their primitive security measures. Soon he would have everything he needed to begin the real work. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had been so hard to kill. 6 months after the awakening began, Captain Ryan Blake stood on the bridge of the human battleship New Earth, watching the Zeltharian capital world burn below. The planet was not truly on fire, but the lights of its great cities flickered and died one by one as human forces systematically dismantled the Coalition's power grid. Final resistance in Sector 7 has collapsed, Commander Lisa Hayes reported from her station. The planetary defense network is completely offline. Blake nodded, feeling no satisfaction in the victory. This was not revenge, though it might look like it to outside observers. This was necessity. The galaxy needed to understand that humanity was no longer extinct, no longer primitive, and no longer willing to be ignored. "Any word from Captain Morrison?" Blake asked. "His task force has secured the Vorthak Military Academy," Hayes replied. 3,000 enemy officers have surrendered. No casualties on our side. That was how most of the war had gone. The Coalition forces, trained for civilized warfare between species who followed accepted rules, found themselves helpless against humans who fought with cunning, speed, and absolute determination. Where Coalition commanders expected honorable battle, humans delivered invisible strikes that crippled entire fleets without warning. The communication system crackled to life. "All human commanders, this is Admiral Blake broadcasting from the Sol system. The homecoming is complete." Blake smiled at hearing his brother's voice. Admiral Tom Blake had been the commander of Earth's Deep Space Defense Force, one of the few humans who had never gone into cryosleep. For over 4 centuries, he had led the hidden watchers who maintained the sleeping facilities and prepared for this day. "Report, Admiral," Blake said into his communicator. "Terra Prime is ours again," Tom replied. "We have restored atmosphere to 30% of the planet. The first colonists from the hidden facilities are already landing. Earth lives again, little brother." Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. On 1,000 worlds, human forces were establishing new colonies or reclaiming old ones. The Coalition's member species watched in growing panic as their former masters were systematically defeated by an enemy they had believed extinct. Dr. Caney Voss and Lieutenant Zara Thex stood at the back of the New Earth's bridge, no longer prisoners but not quite allies either. They had chosen to help the humans locate the remaining cryogenic facilities, and Blake had kept his promise to let them live. Now they served as advisors and witnesses to humanity's return. "Your people will fight back," Thex said quietly. "The Coalition has 1,000 worlds, millions of ships." "Had," Blake corrected. Past tense. As of this morning, the Coalition Council voted to dissolve itself. The Zeltharian Empire has offered unconditional surrender. The Vorthak military has requested terms for an armistice. Dr. Voss looked shocked. "The Coalition has ruled for 600 years. How can it just end?" Blake turned to face the alien scientist. "Because power only exists when people believe in it. When we proved that humans were not extinct, that we were not primitive, that we could not be controlled, the Coalition's authority vanished." On the main screen, a new message appeared. It was from the former Coalition capital, now occupied by human forces. The speaker was a Zeltharian official, but the words were being dictated by human negotiators. "To all species of the galaxy," the message began. "The age of Coalition dominance is over. The Galactic Council will be reorganized under new leadership. All species will have equal representation. All historical crimes will be investigated and addressed." Blake watched as similar messages went out across the galaxy. This was not conquest in the traditional sense. Humans had not sought to replace the Coalition with their own empire. Instead, they were creating something new, something that could never again allow one species to dominate all others. "There will be resistance," Hayes warned. "Some Coalition forces are still fighting in the outer systems." "Let them," Blake said. "Time is on our side now. Every day, more of our people wake up from the long sleep. Every week, we grow stronger while they grow weaker." The truth was that humanity's victory had been inevitable from the moment Blake awakened. Project Exodus had been more than just a survival plan. It had been a complete restructuring of human society and technology, designed to create a species that could not be defeated by conventional means. The enhanced humans emerging from cryosleep were not just soldiers. They were scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers, and leaders. Each one carried knowledge and skills that had been preserved and improved during the long sleep. They were humanity's best and brightest, enhanced to superhuman levels and trained to work together with perfect coordination. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "we are receiving a priority message from the Andromeda facility." Blake nodded. The Andromeda facility was one of the most distant human installations, located in a neighboring galaxy. If they were calling, it meant the final phase of Project Exodus was beginning. "Put it through," Blake ordered. The image of a human woman appeared on the screen. She looked young, but her eyes held the wisdom of centuries. "This is Director Sarah Kim of the Andromeda Expedition. We have completed the long-range survey. The neighboring galaxies are suitable for colonization." Blake felt a deep satisfaction at these words. Humanity was not content to simply reclaim their place in this galaxy. They were preparing to spread to others, ensuring that no single catastrophe could ever threaten their species again. "Excellent news, Director," Blake replied. "How soon can you begin establishing permanent colonies?" "The first colony ships are already under construction. We estimate full deployment within 5 years." Dr. Voss stared at the screen in amazement. "You have been planning this for centuries. All of it. The survival, the recovery, the expansion." "Of course," Blake said. "Did you think we would go quietly into extinction? Did you think we would accept defeat without planning for victory?" Lieutenant Thek shook her head slowly. "We underestimated you. All of us. We thought you were just another primitive species to be conquered and controlled." "That was your first mistake," Blake said. "Humans do not accept control. We adapt. We survive. And we grow stronger from every challenge." He turned back to the main screen, where reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy. Human colonies were being established on hundreds of worlds. Former coalition territories were being reorganized under human oversight. The species that had once considered themselves the masters of the galaxy were learning to live as equals among many. "The galaxy is changing," Blake said to his alien observers. "The age of empires is over. The age of cooperation has begun." Outside, the new Earth, human ships moved through space with purpose and confidence. They were not conquerors but builders, creating a new kind of civilization based on the lessons learned from 4 centuries of exile and preparation. Captain Ryan Blake, the human relic who had been awakened by alien curiosity, now stood as the symbol of humanity's return. He had been frozen as a soldier and awakened as a leader. The galaxy that had tried to erase his species now looked to them for guidance and protection. The long sleep was over. The age of human silence had ended. The future belonged to those who had refused to die quietly in the dark, and that future was brighter than any of them had dared to dream. Humanity was home again, and they would never be silent again. Lieutenant Zara Thex fired her weapon at the spot where Captain Ryan Blake had been standing. The energy blast hit empty air. Blake was already moving, faster than her eyes could track. In 3 swift steps, he crossed the laboratory and knocked the weapon from her hands before she could fire again. "Too slow," Blake said calmly, catching the weapon as it fell. "Your people have been at peace too long. You have forgotten how to fight." Dr. Caney Voss backed away, his 4 eyes wide with terror. "Security alert. Hostile specimen has escaped containment." Blake studied the alien weapon for a moment, then tossed it aside. "Your security cannot help you now. I have been studying your ship for weeks. I know every system, every weakness, every way in and out." The laboratory door burst open as 4 Vorthak guards rushed in, their weapons ready. They saw Blake standing calmly in the center of the room while their lieutenant cowered against the wall. The guards hesitated, confused by the scene. "Shoot him," Thex shouted. "He is dangerous." The guards opened fire. Blake moved like liquid shadow, twisting between the energy beams with impossible speed. His enhanced reflexes and combat training made him untouchable. In seconds, he had crossed the room and disabled all 4 guards without killing any of them. "Impressive training," Blake said, examining one of the unconscious guards. "But you fight like this is a game with rules. Humans learn to fight like our lives depended on it." The ship's alarm systems began wailing. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors. The captain's voice echoed over the communication system, ordering all crew to emergency stations. The Dominion's pride was in full crisis mode. Blake walked to the main computer terminal and began accessing ship systems with his neural implants. His fingers moved across the controls while his mind interfaced directly with the ship's computer core. In minutes, he had complete control of the vessel. "What do you want?" Dr. Voss asked, his voice shaking. "What are you going to do to us?" "Nothing," Blake said, turning to face the terrified scientist. "You are going to help me." "Help you do what?" Blake activated the main display screen, showing a star map of the local galaxy sector. Dozens of red markers appeared, scattered across Coalition space. Each marker represented a hidden human facility that the Coalition had never found. "You are going to help me wake up my people," Blake said. "All of them." Lieutenant Thex struggled to her feet, her pride wounded more than her. "Fighter, we will never help you. The Coalition will stop you." "Will they?" Blake asked. "Let me show you something." He changed the display to show real-time communication intercepts from across the galaxy. The signals he had sent were already reaching their destinations. Hidden facilities were coming online, their ancient computers receiving the activation codes and beginning revival procedures. "Facility 7 on Kepler Prime is responding," Blake said, reading the data streams. "Facility 12 in the Vega system is powering up. Facility 23 in the Outer Rim has begun revival sequences." Dr. Voss stared at the data in horror. "How many facilities are there?" 57 that I know of," Blake replied. "Maybe more. Project Exodus was designed to be thorough." The ship shuddered as something impacted the hull. Blake smiled as he recognized the attack pattern. "And there is the first response." On the external cameras, they could see 3 small ships approaching fast. They looked nothing like Coalition vessels. These ships were angular and aggressive, built for speed and stealth rather than comfort. "Human ships," Thex whispered. "But that is impossible." "Is it?" Blake asked. "Did you really think we put all our people to sleep?" Someone had to stay awake to watch over the facilities, to maintain the equipment, to wait for the signal. The attacking ships opened fire on the Dominion's pride, but their weapons were set to disable rather than destroy. The research vessel's shields flickered and failed. Its engines went offline. Its communication array was surgically destroyed. "Captain Morrison to Sleeping Beauty," a voice came over the emergency channel. "Please tell me you are not dead in there." Blake activated the communication system. "Very much alive, Jake. And I have some new friends who want to meet you." "Copy that, we are coming aboard. Try not to let them shoot us." Minutes later, the airlocks opened and 3 humans entered the laboratory. They moved with the same deadly grace as Blake, their bodies enhanced by the same technology, their eyes carrying the same cold anger. The leader was a tall man with graying hair and scars that spoke of many battles. "Captain Jake Morrison," he said, looking at the terrified aliens. "I have been waiting 460 years to have this conversation." Behind him came 2 others. A woman with short red hair and calculating eyes introduced herself as Commander Lisa Hayes. The younger man with dark skin and cybernetic implants simply nodded and said, "Sergeant Cole Smith." "How many of you are there?" Dr. Voss asked weakly. "Enough," Morrison replied. "We have been hiding in the shadows for centuries, maintaining the facilities, preparing for this day. Did you really think 57 cryogenic installations could run themselves?" Blake brought up the status reports on the main screen. Across the galaxy, hidden facilities were responding to the wake-up call. Thousands of enhanced humans were beginning the revival process, each one carrying centuries of suppressed rage and advanced training. "This is what you feared, is it not?" Blake asked his captors. "This is why you tried so hard to make sure we were completely destroyed. Because you knew that if even a few humans survived, we would come back stronger." Lieutenant Thex found her voice. "The Coalition will mobilize every fleet. We will crush you again." Commander Hayes laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "With what? Your fleets are designed to keep peace between species who follow the rules of civilized warfare. You have never faced an enemy who refuses to play by your rules. We studied your military doctrine while we waited, Sergeant Smith added. Your ships are impressive but predictable. Your tactics are efficient but inflexible. Your soldiers are well-trained but soft. Morrison walked over to the star map and pointed to various systems. Right now, your military commanders are trying to figure out how to respond to reports of human activity in dozens of locations. They are dividing their forces, spreading thin, reacting instead of acting. Meanwhile, Blake continued, our people are waking up in hidden bases you cannot find, using technology you do not understand, following plans you have never seen. Dr. Voss looked at the data streams showing more and more facilities coming online. What do you want from us? Revenge? Destruction? Justice, Blake said simply. You destroyed our worlds, killed our people, tried to erase us from history. But we survived. We adapted. We planned. And now we are back. He turned to face both aliens directly. You have a choice. You can help us locate the remaining facilities and speed up the revival process. Or you can watch as we do it the hard way, taking apart your civilization piece by piece until we find what we need. And if we help you? Thex asked. Then you get to live in the galaxy we build, Blake replied. A galaxy where humans are never again considered primitive or extinct. The communication system crackled with incoming messages from across Coalition space. Reports of human attacks, mysterious ship sightings, and facilities going dark. The IDE galaxy was waking up to a nightmare it thought it had ended centuries ago. Blake smiled as he listened to the reports of chaos and confusion spreading through Coalition space. The age of human silence is over. The age of human dominance has begun. Morrison clapped him on the shoulder. Welcome back to the war, Captain. We saved you a front-row seat. Outside the ship, more human vessels were arriving, emerging from hiding places they had maintained for over 4 centuries. The Coalition had thought they were studying a relic from the past. Instead, they had unleashed humanity's future. And that future was about to reshape the galaxy forever.